All right, and we are live in here.
Hey.
Hey.
Hello.
Hello. Yes, this is
Uh,
episode 18, and we have a guest tonight. So, this is Samantha. She's a former colleague of ours, current colleague of mine, and my clinical supervisor. So, if anyone has any beef with me, now is the time to probably bring it up, as she is here. So,
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming.
Of course.
yeah, I would say it's been a while, but I see you like every other week.
Yeah.
The last time I saw you, I just started. And I think you were
Yeah.
leaving, like,
I know.
literally your last day. I think my first day was your last day.
I feel like I met you a couple of times, like when you were, training or doing orientation, what have you.
Yeah.
You also
Right.
shadowed. You also covered for some people
Yeah.
before, also.
Oh, yeah.
I covered every Thursdays when I was a counselor. So,
That's right.
probably saw you a few times there, too.
Yeah.
But
I was
yeah.
on my way out.
She was ahead of the curve. She knew it before we knew it that we need to get the hell out of there.
Well,
Yeah.
I'd worked for CFD before, so I had a little bit of an inkling.
Yeah. We can say the company's name now, right? We don't work for them anymore.
Oh, well.
I imagine no one who watches this is going to know who CFD is anyway. And they're not even called
That's
CFD
true.
anymore anyway.
Oh, that's true.
Oh, I didn't know that.
They are not.
Yeah.
Interesting name.
It's a DMAP.
Yeah.
And people
DMAP.
still aren't going to know what the hell DMAP is.
Yeah, they're not going to know what it is. So we're in the clear. We're okay.
Well, actually, I guess CFD still does exist, but that's the eating disorder specific.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Oh.
Well, stop narrowing it down for them. I mean,
Well,
it's
I
getting
mean,
more and more specific.
we didn't sign like a DNA or anything, or DNA. Do not.
That's true.
Non-disclosure
Well,
NDA.
NDA.
There you go.
What the
Not
fuck's a
after we left.
DNA?
Yeah.
Dude, what the fuck's a DNA? I know, like, do not resuscitate. What's a DNA, though?
DNA?
Oh, DNA. Just get damn. This is
DNA,
going to be a
like
great
your
episode
Your
tonight.
genetics?
cells. Yeah, genetics.
This is a great episode tonight. I was telling Cutler that, like, before you got on the call, that, like, I got, like, 2 hours of sleep last night because Bubba was, like, sick again, puking. And then he's very dramatic, so the rest of the night he was up just wailing all night. So I got, like, 2 hours of sleep, so this is going to be entertaining.
You're tired. It's all good.
I am tired. I'm
We
perpetually
all have those
tired.
days. Yeah.
But so tonight we're gonna talk two main topics. We want to talk about how the Me Too movement has finally come to esports and the Twitch community and streaming, and then we're gonna focus primarily tonight on eating disorders.
Well, the Me Too movement hit, well, not necessarily esports, but didn't it hit the Twitch community before? But just not on like a large scale.
I
Like,
may
this is
be
the biggest
unaware
it's
of
ever been.
that. I may be unaware of that.
Or I could just be misinformed. Who knows?
Who knows?
But I felt like it's come to Twitch before. We just never made it a big deal as we did now.
Well, I mean, it's well known that women are harassed in video games, so it makes sense
Right.
to me that they would also be harassed in streaming
Right.
and esports.
Yeah.
And
Professional
life.
organizations.
And life,
Yeah.
yeah. I
Life.
mean, and that's why I'm actually glad that we have a woman on here to talk tonight instead of just 2 men talking about
I know, right?
this. But it came out big this week. Like, even like, so I didn't know the names of, like, so basically, for anyone who doesn't know, a bunch of streamers have been harassing other streamers, female streamers, and, like, it seems like people haven't been taking it seriously, and it maybe has been known to be an issue. But even in esports, so, like, Color, do you know Jump? It's like Bill Carter Jump.
Now I know of him.
Okay,
I know
yeah.
who he is now.
See, I knew of
Yeah.
him because he was a host for one of the Rainbow Six events.
Yeah.
Yeah, so apparently he is a big scumbag as well.
Right.
And it's just like, it's every day there's like new allegations.
Right. I have a very unpopular opinion. And I feel like, listen, I'm not justifying any of the shit that those guys did. I'm not justifying for any of it. However, I read some stories where for example, I read this one where they were someone was telling their story and they said something like he said he told me how he felt about me and it made me feel weird and violated, like he had feelings for me, and it made me feel violated, it made me feel weird, it made me feel other adjectives, right? And I just don't what was I gonna say?
Are you talking about Jump?
No.
Oh,
Just
okay.
these stories in general. And I'm trying to explain this in a way where I don't seem biased, but I don't know where that line is. I don't know because it seems like it's such a big gray area. Like when I was in my 20s, it was like you flirt, she sends signals, and it's just like you want to, come back to my place, and the rest is history. But now it's kind of like you have to get permission for everything. And
Well,
I
I
know
guess it just depends on what you define as flirt.
right.
Yeah.
So I mean, being verbally flirtatious, being physically flirtatious.
Still ambiguous though. So I think she's wondering like specific, because like,
Specifics.
I mean, yeah, because like that still could be ambiguous. Because one person could think physically flirtatious could be going right up there and getting a whole handful of ass, right?
Right.
And for many, as like your first like flirt move, that would be like a violation.
Right.
I would think, right?
Yeah.
Not how I flirt. I'm also very awkward, so my flirting is never very good anyway. But
Yeah. I mean, I'm personally I'm personally not a touchy feely type person. I'm a very verbal person. So if I do like someone, and it's kind of like it kind of hits home for me a little bit because I have told women, I have feelings for you. Like, do you want to go out sometime and stuff like that? And if it makes them feel awkward, and they honestly, if they feel violated, that makes me kind of feel like shit. You know what I mean? It's like, well, I didn't mean to make you feel that way. I'm just trying to be honest with you and tell you how I feel.
So in that example, like if that's the example, I get what you're saying. Like I feel like that would be a little oversensitive if you simply are kindly like, hey,
Right.
I like you. Do you want to go out sometime? And they're like feel very violated. Like to me, that's one thing.
Right.
Some of these accusations.
I wouldn't think. Well,
go
what
ahead.
I would say too is like I think one thing that women experience is like it's not just you existing alone in a vacuum. Like I think there is like sometimes, and not you specifically, but like an inherent fear. Like girls have a legit fear of like rejecting a man and being murdered. Like,
Right.
because it happens, and so instead what we do to kind of placate is make up lies or say like I have a boyfriend, or like I can't, or we try to like make up lies because we're afraid of what the reaction would be to the rejection. So that may be something that under the surface is going on as well. It may have nothing to do with you, but just, in being a grown woman who's had many experiences, whether it be dating,
Right.
relationships, out at a bar, whatever, where it's not always safe to reject a guy. And so that rejection process becomes uncomfortable, not necessarily you as a person doing something wrong, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely makes sense. So yeah, I feel like society can, your life experiences kind of shape you to react certain ways and to kind of become who you are. And I can't say I understand, but yeah, that definitely makes lots of sense.
Yeah. I do think in some of these accusations that have come out, there's no shades of gray, like at all.
Yeah.
Like the example you gave, I get what you were saying, and I mean, I
Right.
don't know if that opinion's too unpopular, but like, in the example of Jump, I mean, that's straight up rape. Like that's like date
Yeah.
rape, straight up.
Yeah. There's no excuse for that.
Like there's, it's yeah.
Yeah. I guess my biggest question is, where do we draw that line? Where do we draw the line between what's acceptable and what's not? Because if there are some females who come out and go, well, someone said something to me, they told me how they felt, and it made me feel very weird, very awkward, things like that. It's like, I'm not sure. Maybe it's the way he said it. I don't know. Maybe he said it in a very creepy way. I don't know. But I guess dating is much different now than has been a decade ago, and these things change very, very quickly. And and again, I'm not trying to justify any of these actions, and I'm not trying to say there's no good reason for them to feel the way that they do. I mean, they absolutely, they have a good reason to. But where do we start to educate people, and where do we start to explain what's acceptable and what's not?
It just occurred to me I haven't had to date for like 7 years, so I don't even know
Yeah, me
what
neither.
I don't even know what dating is like now anyway, because I haven't
Yeah.
had to date in 7 years.
Yeah. Well, if I was to say like, well, no, I lied. I have. But like traditional dating, going out and purposely, looking for a date, looking for someone, that significant other. It's been a long time.
So to your question then, Color, so like Samantha, what would be, I guess, like, I mean, I know like in my mind what I think the answer would be, but like maybe the world's heard enough of what people
Men
like
have to
me
say.
think the answer
Yeah,
is,
right.
so maybe it just doesn't
Right.
matter what I think the answer is.
Yeah.
Um,
So I think her sound's out.
no, we can't hear you anymore.
Can't hear you.
What happened?
Yeah, her sound went out.
Oh man, can't hear you. So so while we figured that out, I'm gonna give my thing, is I feel like we probably should let women take the driver's seat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I feel like it's been run by us enough.
Right.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
There we go. Yeah.
You're back.
Okay. I had to disconnect the AirPods, so sorry if there's an echo.
We'll figure it out.
No,
It'll be okay.
there's. I don't hear an echo.
Okay, good.
I don't either.
Oh.
Then what the heck?
Yeah.
Okay, anyway. It doesn't
Oh,
matter.
yeah, I
And
don't
it
know.
screwed everything up because all my Mac devices are connected. So,
Well, it works now. So.
what was the question about dating? Sorry.
No, you're good. So it was the idea of like, I guess Color was asking like, where's the line, and like how should we know?
I mean, I think
yeah.
it kind of goes to like what you were saying with permission. I mean, like sometimes that can seem corny, but like I don't think it ever hurts to just periodically check in and ask the person like, is it okay that I'm doing this or that I'm saying this? Like anytime it's like progressing a step, if you ever just have that gut feeling or picking up on like the girl's potentially uncomfortable, just kind of asking,
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And it's not as easy as it seems in the movies. Like, at least personally, I don't know, I can't speak for every female, but I mean, I appreciate it when, that awareness is there enough to kind of like ask, is this okay? Or, so.
Yeah, because I think like I'm not saying it's a good rebuttal, but the common rebuttal would be it's a mood killer to have to like check in, but like if it makes your partner comfortable, like that's, why is that bad?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can make anything awkward or not awkward in the way you do it. Like, it's not like you're going in this romantic moment for a kiss and you pause and you're like, is it okay? Do I now have your permission to proceed kissing you? Versus like, I really want to kiss you right now. Would that be okay? Or whatever. And then just kind of like being smooth about it. And I don't know. So there's ways that you can make it like suave and flow without, it's not going to seem awkward unless you think it's going to be awkward, and then it will be awkward.
And I think Chad has a good point. Then Phasia is saying like, do we even have to have a line drawn? And it seems like, so then Phasia's a female, and context is key. This is my wife, by the way, so that's who that is. Yeah, I mean, like, so I understand the notion of wanting to know where the line is for some. I mean, I get that. But like, I feel like people who are concerned aren't really the ones that are the violators here that really need to be worried about. Like, if you're that worried about like, violating someone, I don't think you're the person that's really is the problem here.
Right.
But I also don't want to be labeled as one.
Is that a fear you have?
Absolutely. Like if I go out and I meet a woman, I don't want to accidentally say the wrong thing if my intent isn't there. Like if I'm not in the dating game, if I haven't been out and I haven't talked to women like that in a long time, like I don't want to accidentally say the wrong thing. And then, I get plastered as, someone who is creepy or someone who's disrespectful because that's not how I was raised.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to be labeled like that either. So that's why I want to be able to educate myself somewhere to where I can be better at this, where I can do the right thing.
Yeah.
And no, I'm not, like I said, I'm not a touchy-feely type person, so that's not something I have to worry about. But if women are genuinely concerned about what I say to them, of course, I want to take the extra precaution to not say those things or to change the way I approach, you know?
Well, I
Like
heard
growing up.
this comparison once, and it was saying like, and this might be a little harsh, but you know, it resonated with me. If you
Mhm.
have a bowl full of M&Ms and someone tells you 10% of these are poison, you're not going to grab a handful and just throw them in your mouth. You know, and so
Right.
So
and again,
I've actually heard that too, but I heard that as an excuse not to allow immigrants from the Middle East to come to our country. I've heard that
well,
same
not
analogy.
in that context.
I know that's not the context you meant, but I've heard that same analogy before. That's why I thought it was funny.
Yeah, but I
It's like,
think, you
okay.
know, sometimes, you know, if a woman is uncomfortable or something, again, it may not even have anything to do about you, but a lot of times, like, we go into these scenarios automatically cautious and like hoping that this is going to be a safe encounter. You know,
Right.
like even just today I was driving home and you know there's a guy on the side of the road and I have my windows down and it's hot. And like most of the time, if there's a guy just standing on the side of the road and my windows are down, I'm going to roll my windows up because a lot of the time they're going to say something rude or snarky or about my appearance or ask for whatever, try to get my number, you know. And this guy ended up like, you know, I was kind of like, no, I don't want my windows washed or whatever, you know, but he ended up like, just, you know, using polite language and then switching the topic and like, you know, saying, oh, you don't need to apologize. It's okay. You didn't do anything. I'm just trying to make a couple dollars, blah, blah, blah. What do you think about Trump? You know, and he ended up being like a really nice guy. But, you know, the majority of the time, it's like I kind of have to go into that scenario with my windows up because I don't know what I'm encountering. And I'm not saying you're a guy on the side of the road by any means, but I think a lot of times girls go
You
into.
don't know what we do on our. Well, you do actually. You do know what I do on my time off, but yeah.
But you know, I think
I was about to be like, you don't know what I do. It's like, fuck, you do know.
yeah,
You do know
it
what I
can
do. Damn
generalize
it.
a little bit. You know, like when we're going into an encounter with a guy that we don't know very well, we naturally have to be a little bit cautious because we're kind of in a vulnerable situation to begin with. And I think
Right.
any woman that you meet has had very negative experiences with various men in their past, you know. And so I think sometimes it's just kind of like, you know, just creating that safe space for a woman and like letting her know that you're not out for one thing and that you just like, you want to be respectful, you want to be courteous, you know, you're not just trying to get into her pants or whatever, that like you're really interested in something that's not physical or whatever, you know. So I would just say that, like, you know, if there is that apprehension or worry on the woman's part, it doesn't mean it's anything that you've done wrong. Sometimes
Right.
we just go into these situations already cautious, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I think this could be eye-opening for a lot of guys out there. And I remember like when Me Too started, I had that moment for me that was like the blinds lifted, like holy shit, this is what people deal with. So Sam, how often do you get catcalled, harassed? Like I know you made it sound like anytime there's a dude on the road, you roll your window up. When you say every time, are you actually literally saying like this happens daily, weekly?
It
Oh,
happens a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know about daily, but like just what was it? Like 3 days ago, I was getting out of my car on my street and this guy was walking by and he looked at me and he said, "Oh, you're pretty, something, something, something. How are you doing?" And I was like, "Hey." And he was like, "Can I hook you up with a brother or something like that?" And I was like, "No, thank you." You know, and then he walks up the steps and it just so happens that I live in like a typical DC row house where like all the porches are connected. So he was going right directly into my neighbor's house. And so he was waiting on the porch and I had to like, after that very awkward encounter, walk up right next to him and go into my house, like after he propositioned me for his friend that also joined. And it was just like the most awkward encounter where it's like now he's probably going to be talking to my neighbors about me, like, "Oh, who's that girl living next door, da 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 da, does she have a boyfriend?" And you know, and it's like at my own house it's like awkward because like, are they gonna like come over again, is this gonna, you know? And it was just Very uncomfortable, and it happens quite a bit. As a therapist, it happens in sessions, and that's a whole nother thing where you have to like deal with that in an appropriate manner. Just the other day, I had a client text me and say something along the lines of like, well, happy Friday. I hope you're enjoying your evening with your boyfriend. And it was just like, this is awkward because I'm your therapist. And now we have to have this uncomfortable discussion the next time we meet. So it happens a lot. And a lot of the time, like, I don't know if this is self-imposed or societally imposed, but there's like this expectation that like we have to be polite in our rejection of those advances. Otherwise, we're a bitch, we're a whore, we'll get beat up, we'll get called names. You're ugly anyway is a frequent one, whatever. So, we have to kind of find ways to be polite when we feel uncomfortable, which sucks.
That one's always funny to me because it's like, do you go around hitting on ugly women? Like, you were just hitting on me and now you're saying I'm ugly. Like, do you just have a habit of going around and hitting on women you don't find attractive? Like, anyway.
That happens a lot in dating apps too. If I don't respond fast enough or with the right response, then it's like, well, you're ugly anyway.
I don't get that. I don't get why guys do that.
Because they're hurt.
Ego.
I mean,
because they're hurt. It's the same reason why, like, most of the time bullies feel like shit about themselves, right? And it makes them feel better. So instead of like, I just got rejected by a pretty girl, I'm gonna tell myself, nah, she's an ugly bitch anyway. And then it's like, it doesn't matter, right? My full suit of armor is still intact.
And speaking of this whole Black Lives Matter movement too, a lot of times that's when the racist stuff comes out. Like if you reject them, then it turns into whatever, you ugly black bitch, or this or this or that. And then there's comments about appearance and all those things. So it's hard to reject guys because a lot of time it's scary.
So I guess the last thing before we transition off, I'm just curious, what can guys do? What should guys be doing?
Be decent fucking human beings.
I mean, yeah. So like the way I think about it is like, and this is, so the way the curtain was raised for me was, so like when the whole Me Too thing first started, I found out my mom was sexually harassed at her old employer that I used to work at part-time when I was growing up. And I know the dude who like harassed her, and I was not aware of it at all. And that to me was just like, it just, I don't know, for some reason, it just never occurred to me that my mom would be being sexually harassed, like at all of her jobs she's ever had.
I think about that shit too.
Yeah, and then my wife chimed in and was like, yeah, this happens all the time, dude. Like, and then it's just when I guess the light bulb went off and I was like, holy fuck, like this really is like a frequent occurrence.
That's why, I mean, I'm generally really careful, but those thoughts do cross my mind. I was like, what if my mom was approached like this? What if my mother was harassed? Like, do I want that happening to her? Like, fuck no, that shit pisses me off.
And not to sound too Freudian, so treat everyone like they're your mom?
No,
but the same courtesy that you would want like your mom to be treated, you should
treat everybody with it. I treat everybody with the same amount of respect. I treat everybody the same. That's my moral. And you know me. You work with me for a year and a half. Yeah. Have I ever treated any of my counselors like shit? Ever?
No.
Regardless of how often they come in late, I'm always understanding.
No matter how shitty of an employee they were,
even an hour late. And usually, and after a while, they'd open up to me. They'd tell me, "I'm sorry, I had to do that." I'm like, "It's all good. Like, just let me know next time so I can cover for you." But you got to tell me, right?
That's nice.
That's the kind of person that I am, So to me, yes, I am very concerned. I'm not a predator, I'm not that kind of person. But I am overly concerned about how I treat people. It doesn't matter who it is.
And that will, since that is your natural instinct, that will come out naturally.
Yeah.
Because like Donald was saying, like the type of people who need to be worried about that don't care about that.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. I care about it just because I think about these things. If you wouldn't want a
guy doing it to you, you shouldn't do it to a girl.
That's a good one.
I don't even want my ass grabbed. I don't even want a girl doing that to me, to be honest. I have had that happen once to me, and it's really uncomfortable. Like I was like 19 or 20, and a girl came up to me like I was walking on the street and was like, and I was wearing back in the day. So I was wearing like skin tight skinny jeans, you know, and like she came up to me and just straight up was like, "Damn," and like slapped my ass, and like I did not like it. Yeah, I did not like it.
I don't know, man. Like I
did not
actually
like
kind of like it, but I would never dare do that to someone else.
You would not have wanted her to slap your ass, dude.
Why, was it really hard?
It hurt. And it was a stranger in the middle of it was not comfortable. It was also like 2 a.m. It was not a good experience.
Ooh, party.
Yeah, it was not
but I mean, that's a good, because when I used to say, because I think sometimes people's responses, like, for example, catcalling, you know, a lot of guys will be like, oh, that's a compliment. You should know that you still got it, da 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 da. You know, I wouldn't mind if a girl catcalled me. And I'm like, we're not talking about girls catcalling, because I would not mind also if a girl catcalled at me.
Right.
But how would you feel if a guy catcalled at you? Because that's very different. You know, a guy that's bigger and stronger than you are is, you know, there's a difference if a huge guy came over and was like, can I buy you a drink? And you'd be like, no, bro. And then they leave, versus a guy in the corner staring at you and licking his lips. You would have a very different reaction to that, right? So, you know, I think that if you think about it coming from a guy to you, then maybe don't do it.
I feel like I'm an anomaly. I really do. If a guy ever did that to me, I'd probably play along.
Wait. Which scenario? Just the guy approaching you? Because that could be flattering. Yeah. If the first scenario that she laid out is not threatening. Okay. So the guy just like, hey, man, you got great skin. Can I buy you a drink? You'd be like, oh, I'm flattered. You know,
I'd be like,
no, thank
yeah,
you,
sure.
but...
I don't swing that way, though. I'm just letting you know out of courtesy to you, so you're not wasting your time.
Now, what about a guy in the dark corner, you know, rubbing his pants, licking his lips, coming over and be like, hey, you got a pretty mouth. Can I buy you a drink?
No, thank you, though.
Okay.
That's what I do.
Yeah. But
honestly, I would never dare do that to anybody else, though. I know better than that, because I like...
But you're not the problem.
I don't know.
You're not the problem,
I'm compassionate to people. If he wants to have fun, I'll let him have his fun. I don't swing that way, but I'll play along.
But for you, that might be fun.
That's what I'm telling you. I'm an anomaly. That's why it's hard for me to register these things.
I don't know.
It is.
I don't know.
Also, there's an episode of How I Met Your Mother that talks about this, where they go to a gay bar, like the gang goes to a gay bar, because the whole episode is talking about how like women hate being catcalled and it's like so draining, and like the two guys are like, I don't think it'd be that bad. And so they go to a gay bar, and by the end of the episode, they're like, fuck, man, like, my eyes are up here. Like, why do you, like, you know, it's, like, so draining to constantly have, like, every 2 seconds someone coming and hitting on you, trying to buy you a drink, and, like, yeah.
Would I ever worry about getting drugged after telling the dude I didn't swing that way, though? No.
That's privilege.
No. It is privilege.
That could be privilege, yeah. That could be
privileged.
So I feel like we could spend a whole night talking about this, and it's important.
I feel like we could.
But I know we also have another topic to discuss also.
I know you guys will want to talk about what you want to talk about.
Yeah, I'm cool to keep talking about this also. It's important, you know, and it's not every day that we actually have someone who, like, you know, has experience in that issue either.
We'll let Sam decide what she wants to talk about.
It doesn't matter to me.
Well, shit.
Our show.
All right. Yeah. I don't know if you have anything you have to do. It goes between like an hour 15, hour 20, if it varies. But all right, chat. It's up to you. Those of you in chat still. Are we gonna change subjects or keep talking about this? We can go back and forth.
Or I could find a way to tie the relation.
I was about to say, actually, they're kind of related, right? They're both women issues that primarily affect women.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we can segue. So I actually this is one topic that anytime I have to deal with it with clients, I don't know what to do, and I feel really uncomfortable with it. So I'm glad that you're here to talk about it, because
Sure.
So eating disorders.
Yes.
And disordered eating patterns.
Correct. There's a difference. I'm glad you made that distinction.
Thank you. So what is the difference?
So a lot of people may have disordered eating. It just means you're eating in a way that for one reason or another would be quote unquote maladaptive. That's the word we like to use as therapists. You know, if you are depressed and you just got broken up with and you binge on a bunch of whatever junk food, that would be disordered eating. That doesn't mean you have binge eating disorder. So I think where it becomes a disorder is when it, is impacting your life in a negative way, whether it be your physical health, your friendships, your relationships with people. If you're spending a crap ton of money buying a bunch of food, and you don't have enough money to begin with to be spending on that much food, all of these things where it becomes a pervasive pattern over time that negatively impacts your life. That's what's typically defined as a disorder, right? Like hallucinations in and of themselves, who are we to say that, like, if you have a hallucination that you're crazy and you need therapy? If you're living your life just dandy and you're happy and whatever, I'm not going to tell you have schizophrenia. But if you're coming in because these hallucinations are impairing a part of your life to the point where you can't hold a job or keep friendships, then I'm going to tell you have schizophrenia. So it's the same with eating disorders. It has to impair your life in some way.
Yeah, and you make a good point with all the disorders. I mean, you could have sad days. It doesn't mean you have major depressive disorder. It has to get to that point where it's impacting you across life domains and your ability to function. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So why do you? So two questions, I guess. I know the answer to one of them, but why are you passionate about eating disorders? I asked you. I was like, I want you to talk about what you're passionate about instead of me telling you what to talk about. And that was one of the things you brought up. So why is that a passion for you?
So honestly, to start, I kind of fell into it. So when I was in grad school, I went to grad school with a bunch of, and I'll stay on the theme of Black Lives Matter, very privileged, rich white people. And they were able to go through grad school without really needing to work, or at least work full time. I had to work full time. I had bills to pay. I had nobody helping me. So all through grad school, I had to keep a full-time job. And so at that point in time, the job that I found was at an inpatient eating disorder clinic in Southern California. And that's kind of how I initially fell into it. I didn't look for it because I was passionate about eating disorders. I didn't really know very much about it at all at that point. It was honestly just a job opportunity that was within the counseling field, so that interested me. But I quickly became passionate about it because I think at least on the inpatient level, it's very controlled, you're literally living there and eating every single meal in this one house. And it is crazy to see within 1 week of nourishing your body, the night and day difference that I would see in the clients. They would come in just gray and depressed and sad and sick and lethargic, and just their personality didn't show. They just were skeletons of themselves. And within a week or two of just eating, doing some therapy groups, feeling connected, everything just lightened up. They had color in their face, their energy improved, you could see their personalities blossom. And that was, I think, what really stuck with me, of just really seeing how much change a person can go through. But also I don't think it clicked for me because, going into it, I had that mindset of there's a cure for anorexia. It's called food. I don't really get it. It didn't make sense. All you have to do is eat. It's not that hard, And I remember this one client, she so I guess there's a cutoff. And I'll start this by saying eating disorders have the highest mortality rate of any mental illness.
That was going to be my second question, is why do we give a shit? And you just answered it.
Yeah. And so there's a big overlap, not just with the psychological treatment, but there's a lot of medical care that's needed on top of it, because there's a lot of physiological side effects to it. And I remember this one girl, her heart rate was in the 30s. And I think the cutoff to be hospitalized is
low.
35, and she was 37 or something, because we had to take their heart rate and their blood pressure throughout the day. And so since her heart rate was so low, she had to drink like a supplement. So we would give them Boost, you know, those like meal replacement drinks that old people drink. You know, we would count out the calories and measure it in a little shot glass according to how many calories they needed. And it was like a shot glass this big of Boost. And I put it in front of this girl, and she was like having a panic attack and crying and shaking and would not drink it. And I was like, holy crap, like this girl's heart rate is in the 30s. She's literally about to drop dead, and she cannot drink this shot glass of Boost. Like this is like deeper than just eat. Like this is a real thing. So I think that's really when it like sunk in for me, like how legit, you know, these disorders are and how deep they are and how psychological they are.
So I used to work I was an ED counselor before I went over to your facility. And when I first started, I'm going to admit, I didn't know jack shit about mental health. I knew a little bit, but that was it. And I was just like, ED, huh? And I didn't really know much. So what I did was I went through all the clients' charts just to kind of see, read up on their notes and whatnot. And a lot of them, a good chunk of them was sexual assault. So my question to you is, I'm not sure how long you've been doing this, but where do you think a lot of eating disorders come from?
Well, first of all, a quarter of all females have experienced sexual assault in
And
their
I think
life.
it's like 80% of mental health consumers for females as well have a trauma background.
Yeah, I don't know the numbers on that.
I know when I did in-home, 80% of in-home of kids who need intensive in-home therapy have a trauma history, either if it's abuse, neglect, or sexual assault.
Yeah. So I would say, yeah, across the board for mental health, childhood trauma is huge in general. What I have seen, and again, I don't know what the numbers are, but the trends kind of show that with bulimia specifically, there is a lot more trauma and abuse, like sexual abuse. Because bulimia, you can kind of think of it in terms of like an addiction, like people who use substances or, you know, like drink alcohol or use heroin or whatever, right? It's this way of like regulating their emotions because they need to like cope with this like intense emotional reaction that they're having a lot of times as a result of trauma and not learning how to regulate their emotions at an early age. So there's a lot of correlation between bulimia and trauma like that. But with anorexia, it's actually not as correlated. With anorexia, there's a lot, like the typical profile is like a very perfectionistic type A, OCD, anxiety type of presentation. So it's usually, you know, a pretty well-off family. Oddly, I don't know if there's research behind this, but like a lot of times there's like a sick sibling. So a lot of attention goes to the sibling. And so this like perfectionism thing is like a way, kind of a backwards way of like getting attention, which is interesting. And in a lot of ways too, going off of sexual assault, a lot of what I've heard from my clients with various eating disorders is that it's a way to make themselves look undesirable. So for example, binge eating disorder, you know, if I just make myself fat, nobody's going to want to have sex with me or try to have sex with me.
It's funny you mentioned that. Not funny like ha ha ha, but like the truth, just from you speaking now, like every single one of my clients that I had at my old job that had anorexia were all rich white women. Well, teenage girls, rich white girls. And I had multiple clients. One of them, I remember she was restricting her eating because she was trying to lose her breast because she was raped previously. And she was like, if I can make myself unattractive, no one would want to take advantage of me again. Yeah.
Because it usually happens around puberty when
Actually, that client was your client and came back and then became my client. Anyway, doesn't matter. But yeah. It's crazy.
It's very deep. It's very deep. Sometimes it's also been related to like this desire to stay like prepubescent, like a child. You know, if you're not ready to grow up and have these sorts of like adult responsibilities, you still want to stay like, you know, mommy's little girl or daddy's little girl and whatever. But it can have, you know, really detrimental physiological side effects, like you lose your period. If you are anorexic for an extended period of time, that can lead to infertility, like forever. Osteoporosis, it makes your hair fall out. Like it's gnarly on the body.
Yeah. So we just got a big raid. So just to fill everyone in,
Hey,
we were
thanks for the
talking
raid.
about eating disorders. What we're talking about now, just so everyone is caught up to what we're talking about.
What's a raid?
So with like Twitch streaming, so like
I'm
when
a noob.
you're a
Sorry.
noob, it's fine. So when someone ends their stream, they can send everyone that's watching them into someone else's stream. It's called a raid.
Oh,
So it's like a raiding party of
well,
viewers.
that's cool.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Yes, so we were talking about eating disorders. Earlier we were
just get the hang of
talking
it.
about harassment towards women. Now we're talking about eating disorders. So this is my clinical supervisor and colleague, Samantha, for those of you who just are in now. And she wanted to talk about eating disorders. So that's what we're talking about.
So
Yes.
I also have my lovely handy dandy DSM-5
I do too.
with all of the
Hey.
diagnoses.
Aren't they up to the 6th edition now?
Nah, it's 5.
Please
This
tell
5th
me.
edition?
5th. It better not be up to
Fifth?
6, or I'm gonna shit myself because
That's a lot
I'm
of
studying
things.
off the 5. So if the 6 just came out, I'm gonna scream and throw this out the window. So they better
Yeah.
not have done a 6 yet, or I'd be pissed.
So I also wanted to talk about, well, I guess one thing, I want to kind of break any myths or misconceptions, because I think when people think of eating disorders, they either think of anorexia, aka starving yourself, or bulimia, aka throwing up. But it goes a lot deeper than that. Purging isn't just self-induced vomiting. Purging can be over-exercising, where you spend 6 hours in the gym. Like I've had clients at the gym so long they pass out or they get banned from the gym. It could be laxatives. Some people will take like a box of laxatives a day, literally. It can be enemas. It can be diuretics. So there's a lot of things that are considered purging other than just making yourself throw up.
Spit.
And go ahead. What?
Spitting. I know, like,
Oh, chew and spit. Yeah, that's a thing.
yeah, because I know, like, it's not related to specifically to eating disorders, but I remember when I was in middle school and I wrestled, we were all encouraged in the wrestling team to carry milk jugs with us and fill them up with spit to lose weight.
Yep.
And that, to me, at that age, already seemed very unhealthy.
Yeah, and you know what they say too is that like a lot more men have eating disorders than are diagnosed, because it's societally acceptable to like spend all day in the gym getting buff and swole and like just eating almonds and chicken and broccoli all day. That's an eating disorder. You know, if you can't function emotionally without going to the gym for however many hours or eating a carb, then that's an eating disorder. But I think that as a society, that's valued, you know, in a way. So a lot of men are underdiagnosed for that.
What other kind of myths did you want to dispel?
So there's also pica, which is eating things that are not food,
Yeah.
like chalk, or like if you've ever watched My Strange Addiction, where they eat
Oh,
like
couch
dryer
cushions?
sheets. Huh?
like couch cushions and stuff?
Yeah. Or dryer sheets or paper towels.
Toilet
How-
paper.
how do they get that-
yeah.
How do they get that out of them? I mean, your body doesn't digest
Sometimes
things
you
like
have to
that.
get like surgery to remove, and because it can obstruct you, and like you can get
Right.
septic and all sorts of bad shit.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Oh,
gross
oh
too.
my.
I don't know. Dryer sheets. It's just, ugh.
Bars of soap, yeah. Legion, that's another deodorant. Are you talking from like? I mean, we could go on. There's anything that's
Yeah.
not edible and has no Well, I guess anything's edible. Anything that doesn't give nutritional value is considered
That
pica,
is not
right?
categorized as food.
Yeah. Hair.
Too. Yeah, there's a lot. It's a thing. And it's in the DSM under feeding and eating disorders. There's also obviously binge eating disorder. There's something called, what's it called? Avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, ARFID. And so that is something you don't see very often. It's usually in little kids, and it's usually related to like autism spectrum disorders. So it's like, if your kid is like has an aversion to like certain textures or sensory properties of foods, so like if they don't like gooey foods or crunchy foods, or if they don't like the sound of the chewing or something like that, people usually grow out of that. That's not like a super common one, but it is one that's out there.
So is this would you say this is primarily like a Western disorder? Like,
well, you know what's interesting? That's a great question, Donald. Thank you.
Oh yes, thank you. It's like I prepared somewhat for this. Yes.
Short answer is yes. Long answer is no.
Oh.
There was, and I'm probably gonna butcher the story, but there was like this tribe in Fiji, and they were just a very like, they were not an industry, like it was just very much like, literally when you think of like an ancient tribe in the Amazon or something like that, like they ate off the land, they lived in like huts that they grew themselves, like it was a very like
hunter-gatherer kind of.
Yeah, it was, and they had like no eating disorders. And then television was introduced to Fiji, and within like 5 years or something crazy, the rate of eating disorders in Fiji equaled the rate of eating disorders in the United States.
Wow.
So it's a media problem.
That's part of it. It's like this societal, a lot of it has to do with like society's view of beauty, which, in our culture here is like being thin. Back in the day, in whatever 1600s, if you were fat, you were beautiful because it meant you had enough money to eat. And so that was seen as desirable. But now if you're thin, that means you have money to spend on personal trainers and diet pills and surgery and fake whatever shit. And that's seen as desirable. So a lot of it does have to do with like, this expectation of beauty that we have.
I think Dawn and I discussed this many, many episodes ago, how social media is kind of like the root of all evil.
Yeah.
So that's actually we actually have a question in chat. That's a good one. It's related adjacent. But so like one symptom of depression and grief could be like lack of appetite, increase in appetite. So it's related in that sense, but obviously this is more depression related. But like chat, so when they were 18, there was almost a 30 or 40 day period where they ate almost nothing because they were going through a breakup. It was literally I could not keep food down until my boss forced me to eat. How does one deal with or prepare for that sort of thing?
So yeah, I think like what you said, sometimes with a certain stressor, like a breakup, a death in the family, something like that, a huge loss, losing your job, going to college, graduating college, whatever, sometimes it is a normal symptom to have changes in your appetite, changes in your sleep, things like that. But if it's at the point where it's becoming unhealthy, I would say 30 to 40 days without food is pretty serious, and you would, potentially have serious physical side effects, like you may be fainting or have electrolyte imbalances and, messed up blood pressure and stuff like that. I would say if you're noticing that that's something that's happening, to seek out therapy, and learn some other ways to cope and express whatever it is that you're feeling. Because a lot of times this is just like our own natural way of coping with something, until we give it another way of coping with it.
So resolve the issue, basically, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and some of it is normal, so don't beat yourself up. But I think that if you're noticing you're having such an intense reaction, to seek out therapy, and it doesn't have to be forever. If it's directly related to a breakup, you could see somebody for a few sessions, and get some relief that way. And there's also, there's something called, I'm gonna, I guess, plug this website, but it's called Open Path. And, I know one big barrier for people getting therapy is the cost. And even if you have insurance, it doesn't always cover it. It doesn't always cover all of it. Maybe it limits the sessions. Maybe you get to pick through 3 crappy therapists, whatever. But Open Path is a website you can go on, and you can browse through different therapists, and it's like a sliding scale. So it's like $40, $30 to $60 a session or something like that. And you can do it virtually or in person. There's apps out there that you can use where you can text a therapist if you're not quite ready yet to make the step to go see a therapist, like Talkspace, stuff like that. So, you don't have to commit to paying $100 and something to go see somebody every week. There's other options out there to talk with a therapist.
It's actually interesting. So this is not fully related, but it is. Someone actually tweeted and tagged me on something. So there's actually a new website called takethis.org, and they're gathering a database of therapists who are competent in the gaming community. So they're seeking licensed mental health professionals in the U.S. who work with gamers and geeks in an affirming manner who want to be included in our clinical licensing listing. And they want to have therapists that specifically know the struggles of like streaming, content creating, gaming, esports. I thought that was really cool.
That is cool.
And one day I will be on that website one day. But I thought it was really cool.
Yeah. I affirm you and your experiences, but I don't know enough about
That is very, very validating. Thank you. But yeah, that was a good question from chat. That was good. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess, like, since we had a bunch of people come in now, I mean, the reason eating disorders matter, and, like, as Sam said earlier, is it's, like, did you say the second most deadly?
Number one
most deadly mental health disorder.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
And,
oh, no, go ahead.
No.
I was just going to say that, it's not obviously like the first, you may think of like anorexia, like obviously you're dying because you are not feeding your body. But bulimia is actually pretty fatal as well. And it can kind of be a silent killer because it doesn't look necessarily like you're sick from the outside, because you may not be underweight. But what bulimia does is when you're purging, whether that's through vomiting or whatever else, you're really throwing off your electrolyte imbalances. And so you can have heart attacks and stuff like that. And that's actually one of the contributing factors to Amy Winehouse's death. It was not a drug overdose. It was partially because she was bulimic and her heart stopped.
Oh,
I did not know that. I just thought it was substance use. Yeah.
Wow. So that can really get you. And there's also something called refeeding syndrome, which if you are severely anorexic and malnourished and you just start eating again, that also throws off your electrolytes and then you can have a heart attack. And that's actually what happened to a lot of Jews when they left concentration camps. They were so excited to eat again. A lot of them got refeeding syndrome. So when you do enter treatment for anorexia specifically, they'll put you on a very regimented, slowly increasing meal plan, because if you eat too much too quickly, that can be fatal. So there's a lot of ways that various eating disorders can kill you, other than just starvation. So,
damn.
Yeah.
I did not know that. So for most treatment for eating disorders, I know like what I've been exposed to primarily is like the residential inpatient. Is that like primarily where like if one has like, or can you even be like outpatient providers?
Yeah, inpatient is usually like if you need that medical supervision, or if you've tried a bunch of stuff and it hasn't worked, then you would go to residential. And then there's like step downs like PHP where you would go for the whole day, but then you go home at night. IOP, you might go for a few days a week. So that's intensive outpatient. But I think that even if you just have disordered eating, there are resources out there, whether it's just therapy. It's always recommended to have a primary care doctor and a nutritionist as well.
There's a reminder for Samantha.
Sorry, Google's talking to me.
It's important you have that reminder, though. You need that.
Yeah. So yeah, you should at least have a therapist, or a regular doctor, and a nutritionist talking about all of those different facets. So that would be the bare minimum, I would say.
So chat brought this up, and I actually have been exposed to this in my last job. So there are parts of the internet that there's websites, there's Instagram accounts, there's like different ones. It's like Pro Anna, I think they call it. Yeah. Where it literally like teaches you ways to be anorexic, encourages it. There's also inspiration. There you go. There's also similar ones for depression. So I had a client once who subscribed to a daily alert reminder of how shitty of a person they were. So they would get negative affirmations daily sent to them to remind them how horrible they are. Like one day it may be like, you'll never amount to anything, no one will ever love you. The next day it may be like, you're an ugly bitch and you should go kill yourself. Yeah,
you told me about this before.
Yeah, it was heartbreaking. I was like, holy shit. Yeah.
Yeah, so Instagram, that's funny because I've tried to kind of browse Instagram for those hashtags before, and they're actually blocked. So if you try to do a hashtag pro Anna, it will not let you. Or hashtag Thinspiration, stuff like that. They've blocked a lot of that. But there are like dedicated pro Anna websites where they'll teach you tips and tricks on how to eat less. But to be honest, if you open any Cosmo magazine or whatever magazine, it's going to tell you ways that you can eat less. And that's what makes it so difficult to treat, because you can be going to therapy every single day and you go out to the store and you see a magazine that's teaching you ways to fill yourself up with ice or whatever. The girl I was talking about earlier who had that panic attack about drinking the shot glass of Boost, she was actually like, she's 16 or something, and she lived in New York, and she was like stopped on the street and given a modeling contract. And she was like severely anorexic. So there's so much reinforcement in society that it's really hard to treat, because we're rewarding people for being skinny. And we're teaching people how to eat less, and we're talking about diets and losing weight and so even if you block Pro Anna and Thinspiration stuff, you just watch TV and you'll find it anyway,
And there's actually some studies now that are saying that like the main predictor of your health is not your weight anyway.
No, it's not.
Like, so, I mean, and then I guess the other thing that I would bring up is, and like the three of us used to work together at our last employer. So like the like mantra of like all foods fit.
Mm-hmm. Health at every size. Yeah. So yeah, the number on the scale, is pretty much pointless. Like, and I'm a therapist, but I work in a primary care clinic with a bunch of doctors, and they even agree, unless you're like diabetic or a kid, your weight really doesn't matter. Like the number on the scale, first of all, fluctuates between 5 and 10 pounds every day. If you take a big shit, you're going to lose 5 pounds right there. Like, it's pointless.
I took one of those today. Those
are the best ones.
It felt good.
Yeah, so, it can be water, it can be poop, it can be muscle, it can be fat, it can be your brain. I'll tell some clients, like, if you really care about the number, why don't you chop your arm off? Because you'll lose like 20 pounds right there. I don't know how much an arm weighs, but the number is pointless.
My arms do not weigh 20 pounds, but yeah.
I don't know. What does an arm weigh? 10 pounds? 5 pounds? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either.
But the number doesn't matter. So I tell all of my clients, not to weigh themselves. I don't weigh myself. It doesn't really tell you anything, So unless you're like a wrestler, and there's a lot of eating disorders in wrestling, BT dubs.
Yeah, no. I mean, like I was saying earlier, we were encouraged by our coach to like spend a whole day, if you wanted to fill up as many like milk gallon jugs of your spit that you could in a day. to drop as much, and that can't be healthy. Like dehydrate yourself for weigh in, like that can't be good.
Nope.
So would you consider that this kind of ties into what we were discussing earlier, like kind of the collateral of what you could potentially do to somebody?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was talking with a client recently who has disordered eating, and she really worries about like her body image and how it's perceived by others, and people making comments about, "Ooh, you've gained weight," or "Ooh, you've lost weight," right? And I kind of asked her, I was like, "Do you think that those comments come from men or women?" They pretty much all come from women. And so I think there is a difference between, this societal expectation that we have of females, that like we think it's what guys want, or we think it's what's popular. And sometimes guys think that guys want what they want. And they're like, I don't want this, but society's telling me I should want this. This is what I see, but I actually don't want, it's just like, it's very confusing. But I think that a lot of times girls do it in hopes of being able to, sometimes it is to push men away, like we talked about earlier, to be not desirable, but sometimes it is a way of becoming desirable because they think that that's what guys want. And or a lot of times I've had a lot of clients who have had males or male partners tell them that they were too fat. And make comments about their physical appearance. And that is really traumatic for a lot of people, especially if you have an eating disorder or are susceptible to one. Getting that kind of feedback from a man, like really, really sticks with you, whether that's your dad or your brother or your boyfriend or a teacher or whatever. So I think that it ties into it a little bit in that way.
And I'm surprised, like, eating disorders are not more prevalent, if that's the right word, in the Far East, because Asian culture is all about beauty. I mean, look how many beauty products come from like Korea and Japan, so it's like I feel like
our rates
it's part of the norm over there, like being thin and looking a certain way. I mean, in South Korea, do you see how many women get plastic surgery? I mean, if someone made a GIF of all the beauty contest or beauty pageant winners of South Korea, of Miss South Korea, they all look almost identical because they all get the same surgeries.
Are you saying you're surprised that eating disorders are not prevalent in Asian cultures? Do we know that?
Are they? Am I mistaken?
That's what I'm trying to look up right now, real quick. Honestly, is like the prevalence. Now, the plastic surgery thing would be more along the lines of like a body dysmorphic kind of.
Right.
Oh, you bring up an interesting point, Donald, with body dysmorphia.
I'm winning so many brownie points with my clinical supervisor tonight, guys. This is awesome.
Good job.
I can slack off now.
But actually, one of the criteria in order to be diagnosed with anorexia is there has to be a body dysmorphia component, which means that when you look at yourself, you don't see a skinny anorexic person. Like, they legit think that they're fat. And so they're not going to be walking around in little crop tops and short skirts showing off their cute little skinny bodies. They're going to be covered like in hoodies with baggy sweatpants, and you may not even know that they're underweight because they're so ashamed of their body that they're covering it. So that was just a slight tangent about body.
Well, and we've seen that in the clients that we used to have, where they would always be wearing like they'd also try to make themselves. Yeah, and they would always sit like with their knees up to their chest, like make themselves look as small as they possibly can.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whenever I did my intake, like biopsych assessments, I could always tell if they had an eating disorder based on how they sat on the couch. Like, like every
time. And then
time.
the body checking, so they'll do stuff like this, because they know the size of their wrist, or they'll kind of like make sure they can feel like bones in their neck, or they'll pinch their stomach fat or whatever. So see that a lot in session. A lot of self-harm. But yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to tangent away from that. I can't speak to the Asian culture and what eating disorders look like in Asia, but that is a very interesting point.
According to the DSM, it's very prevalent in Japan. So it's primarily in post-industrialized high-income countries. They have a little point here that says The absence of an expressed intense fear of weight gain, sometimes referred to as fat phobia, appears to be relatively more common in populations in Asia, where the rationale for dietary restriction is commonly related to a more culturally sanctioned complaint, such as gastrointestinal discomfort. I don't know. That's what the DSM says. But we actually have a good question here in chat also. And it's similar about body acceptance. And like, so it's relative. Okay. So they want to apologize in advance for the wording. It's going to sound crude, but therapists have heard all sorts of crude shit. Like we'll be fine. We'll get through this. Okay. So this person's been exposed to porn for a long time. It used to be a huge form of shame for them, religious wise. And therefore have been exposed to a fake version of both sex and the female form. And so even me trying to be as open as I can be has this mental image of what a man and a woman, quote, should look like. How do you go about changing that sort of mindset as a society? Basically, in our opinion, how do we change this as a bigger picture?
I think talking about it is really important. And I think that over time, even though there's still this expectation that women should be thin and tall or whatever it is, I think there's been a lot of growth in the direction in terms of like body acceptance. Like the Kardashians are not skinny people. You know, a lot of these very famous, like beloved people are coming from all shapes and sizes. And I think there has been a movement towards that. Like Victoria's Secret is like going to shit. Like, you know, they're not doing the fashion show. Cause I used to watch that as like a little kid. And like, I would feel so bad about myself as like, you know, just like a 12-year-old girl that's like, you know, watching these like tall, lanky giraffes in lingerie, like thinking that that's what beauty is. And you just feel so bad about yourself. And so I think that like there has been like some positive change towards showing a whole bunch of different like body types. For example, there's a company called Aerie, and they're like a I don't know the term. They're the same corporation as like the Aeropostale, but they're like underwear line. And so all of their models are like not photoshopped, just like real stretch marks, cellulite, whatever. They're just like real normal people. So I think there is like a positive movement towards that, away from like the photoshoppy, like skinny, anorexic looking people. So I think that's a positive thing. I think we're going in the right direction, but I think it's important as a society that we all take steps in like just normal conversation to like not compliment people for losing weight. Like kind of think about why you're saying the things that you're saying. Like if somebody's lost weight, why is it your first inclination to congratulate them? Did they mean to lose weight? Are they sick? You know, I've had multiple clients who like had like serious illnesses like cancer or kidney disease, and they're sickly and losing weight. And people are like, oh my God, what are your secrets to losing weight? And it's like, cancer. Like, what the fuck?
Cancer. Cancer.
I'm on the chemo diet.
Yeah.
The South Beach chemo diet. Yeah,
it's super fucked up. So I think that it's important to like just spread the word yourself of like gaining weight isn't good or bad. Losing weight isn't good or bad. Like ask the person how they feel about it. Don't assume that they wanted to gain or lose weight. Like you have no idea what somebody's like personal struggle has been. So I would just like, you know, a normal conversation, like check your language and check other people. You know, if somebody compliments you for losing weight, ask them why they're complimenting you. And I bet they'll like be stunned as like, you know, then they have to kind of think about it. So I think changing the language is really important. And I think your own body acceptance is going to help with accepting others' bodies as well, and vice versa. My black cat is entering the picture now.
Oh, look at that. That is just heartwarming.
Good kitty.
And men get this too. I mean, like, men are constantly shoved down our throats, so you have to have like a washboard, you know, all that sort of stuff. And like, I think we talked about this like a while ago on a previous episode. The amount of work it takes to get that body. You have like these celebrities have a whole team behind them to make them look like that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of cool videos you can look at, like the Dove commercial and stuff. If you go on YouTube, you can kind of watch. It's like a time-lapsed video of like what they do to a model before her picture makes it to a billboard. And they like extend her neck and like push her eyes together and like all this weird shit that's like alien.
Lots of airbrusting.
Yeah, it's
even in movies too. They have
yeah.
the technology to do that in movies. They can make you look younger. They can make you look thinner. Do all that shit.
Yeah. And even as a female, the only time I see a real woman's body other than my own is like in a locker room. Because like I'm not exposed to that either. Like I don't live with a bunch of girls. Like I don't see girls naked regularly. Like I don't even know what like girls' bodies look like, you know? So there is no should or shouldn't. Like, you know, there is no, I'm a real woman, you know, like everybody's a real, if you're a human being, like you're a real woman, there are no shoulds and no should nots. But I think it's hard because, yeah, we don't really get representations of what real women look like, because if we look on the internet or TV or magazines or wherever, it's all fake, you know, so tricky.
So that's a good question. And I think you may have missed us talking about that. But so what about the other direction, like severely overweight? When does it stop being you should be positive about yourself? And when do you go into the territory of unhealthy?
So unless you're their doctor, you should not worry about their health. Because there are a lot of reasons why somebody may be overweight. It could be diabetes. It could be PCOS. It could be thyroid issues. It could be that they have struggled with an eating disorder.
I guess he's asking, like, for oneself, like, when do you know you reach that point and now everyone's knowing who's signing on to you play?
Can I answer this one?
Yeah.
So this is what I did. So ever since I left CFD, I lost about, I would say based on the way my clothes fit and my weight at the time when my clothes fit, I lost about 55 pounds ever since I left CFD. I didn't do it for appearance-wise, but I did it for health reasons. There were changes that were happening in my health that I noticed is like, this is not right. I should not be struggling when I'm doing these things. And so I took it upon myself to watch what I'm eating, do a lifestyle change, you know, things that I feel as if that I should be doing. I don't restrict or anything like that. I mean, I turn to Whole Foods now and it makes me feel good. So I just eat like that now. I still get all my food groups in. I don't deny myself. On the weekends I cheat. But I'm not scared of food. Why is it called
cheating? Don't label food as good or bad.
You're right. I'm sorry. My apologies. It's not cheating. But yeah, I'll be a little more. Can I use the word liberal?
Yeah.
I'm a little more liberal on the weekends.
But so, like, for you, you're saying that you started to notice physiological symptoms that were concerning.
Right.
Okay.
Because so, I've gone through it before. And when I went through that, I was like, you know, these symptoms are similar to back then. I don't want to get into too many details, but, you know, they were similar to what they were before when I needed to, you know, make some changes.
I would say at the end of the day, consult a doctor.
Yeah.
And I think if you're doing anything and this kind of goes to a little bit of the comments that I was looking at as well. If you're doing anything for the reason of self-soothing, then it's something to look at, you know, whether it's alcohol, like there's a difference between having a glass of wine or a beer at night and like being depressed and drinking to numb away your depression every day. You know, it's the same thing with food. If you're eating because you like eating and you're socializing and you're with your family or you're with friends or whatever, you're hungry, you know, that's very different than, you know, eating because you feel bad about yourself or as a coping skill. So whether you're overweight, underweight, whatever, if you're doing something like eating to fill an emotional need, then that's, you know, the point where you should, you know, look at finding a therapist or something like that to kind of figure out what's going on, because it's a symptom of a bigger issue.
So BMI is horrible, man. I will say that.
Yeah, BMI is terrible.
BMI is not a good judge for one's health or their weight. Because, like, so for instance, like I know for instance, like bodybuilders, on the BMI, bodybuilders
morbidly obese,
They're
yeah.
morbidly obese. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, you can't always go off of height and weight anymore. And I think we said this before you rated, but like there's actually studies now that determine that weight's not really a factor of health anymore.
Right.
There's always going to be exceptions. Like obviously, like an 800-pound person is going to probably have complications, right? But like in general, one's weight's not really an indicator of one's health.
Because technically, I've been overweight my entire life. But when I was in high school, I used to play basketball 4 hours a day. But I was still overweight. My numbers looked amazing. But my doctor at the time told me, you need to lose weight because you might have issues in the future. And I would go back to the same doctor, and I know we talked about this a couple weeks ago, but my mom was just like, no, my son's not losing anymore. He doesn't need to. He plays sports. He's physically active 3-4 hours a day every single day. He doesn't need to go on a fucking diet.
Doctors aren't like, I literally, any client of mine that I've had that's had an eating disorder has had like a traumatic story from the doctors.
Yeah.
Like their bedside manner and education when it comes to like eating disorders and disordered eating is not good. It is kind of based on this, and you can get into the details of how BMI was scaled to, reflect white, whatever, it's not culturally sensitive. It means nothing basically. But doctors, I mean, yeah, I don't want to shit on doctors, but like they're not always very cognizant of like, the messages because a lot of doctors, they see like people with diabetes that are morbidly obese all day. So they're harping on like diet, exercise, lose weight, diet, exercise, lose weight, which is appropriate for somebody that's overweight, eats unhealthy, doesn't exercise, and is hypertensive. Right. But for somebody that's active and plays like basketball and sports all day and eats fairly healthy and is like, whatever, like that's not the message that you want to be sending. So I think I've actually done quite a few trainings with the doctors at the clinic I work at because they haven't really gotten that education on eating disorders and how to, be sensitive to the messages that they're sending people.
There's also like genetics and like your bodies are built certain ways, right? Like there's some people that like no matter what they do, their bodies are going to want to maintain a certain homeostasis and maintain a certain range of what their body's like. I mean, that's reality too. But all doctors' bedside manners for the most part suck anyway. And what reminds me is the psychiatrist of the place we used to work at. Oh. So he's like brilliant man. He's a great psychiatrist. He knows what he's doing, but like his bedside manners are shit.
Yeah.
You disagree? I think the more I got to know him, I think he really knows what he's doing. I think I don't know. But the whole time you're talking to him, just yep, I swear he's a coke. I feel like he's a cokehead, but anyway.
His Gucci flip flops.
Oh my god.
When I first met this man, it's irrelevant, but I'm gonna say it anyway. When I first met this man, he came in with leopard print slacks, matching leopard print loafers, a see-through blazer, and like a polka dot button-up shirt. And I was just like, hey.
And he used to drink water from the cup and then just like put it on the drying rack. He wouldn't even clean it.
That's gross, dude.
I watched him do it multiple times. I'm like, you're a doctor. Clean your cup. Oh my god.
Wow. So last minute questions, chat. Does anyone have any last minute questions? We're coming up on an hour 20, and I just want to be mindful of everyone's time.
And while we're giving time for that, I do want to recommend a book and plug this.
Look at that! Look at you.
It's called Permission to Eat. It's geared towards college students, but doesn't just apply to college students. It's written by a registered dietitian who is in recovery from an eating disorder. So she understands what it is to have an eating disorder. And she also looks at it from the science side of it. So if you feel like you're struggling with disordered eating or anything like that, I recommend it. Again, Permission to Eat. Available on Kindle and Amazon.
Yeah, send us some money, dietitian, for plugging your book. No, but yeah. I mean, so like that last question that got put in, I mean, we would probably need to know more information, but like I would say seek help is like a very generic answer. Getting over depression 100%, trying to feel happy. What I would say is like really learning to analyze how you think about things. Because like what's jumping out to me is like you can't be happy no matter what. Obstacles in your way, not overcoming them. A therapist would probably work with you on teaching you how to analyze how you think and perceive events and what your thoughts, how that influences how you feel about things.
Eating disorders are not about food.
Yeah.
It's about whatever's underneath: depression, anxiety, self-esteem,
lack of control.
Yeah, it's not about food. That's just the vessel.
Yeah. But yeah, Legion, we can talk offline sometime. And I can't give you therapy because we're friends and that's unethical, but I could like at least point you. A lot of CBT actually you can teach yourself. There's some really good books out there. I'm going to plug a book now. I don't have it right next to me, but it's called Your Erroneous Zones. I'm actually going to link it in chat. It's a really good book.
Are you sure it's not your erogenous zones?
You want to know what's funny about that is I was reading it at one of my old jobs, and my supervisor thought that's what it said, and she pulled me aside and was like, "You can't read this here." And I was like, "Reread the title, lady." Erroneous Zones. There it is. It's on Amazon, I'm sure. But it's a self-help book, but it walks you through CBT basically and like how to like identify your thoughts and feelings, things like that. It's a really good book, and it's written for a layperson. So it's like it's not written for a therapist. It's not like a treatment manual. It's like a self-help book, but it's really good. Yeah. There's other good ones too, but that we'll probably leave that there. Did you want to plug anything else, Sam? Like any of your like socials or anything, or?
No, those are still up and coming.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if you ever want to come back, I know another topic that we're not talking about it tonight because we're out of time, but psychosis I know is something you're really passionate about, and I feel like people who don't know about psychosis would be really interested in it because it's fascinating and, and terrifying all at the same time. So
keeps you on your toes.
Yeah, it's freaky.
No, I'm interested. No, I'm very interested.
Psychosis, we'll have to leave that. I will say I've never had psychosis, but I have had clients that were psychotic actively in session, and it's freaky as hell.
You can always tell, and there's a part of it that you can't even explain in words. It's an energy, and you're like, "This is something."
Freaky. Yeah, no, it's freaky. Yeah, it is weird having a client tell you that there's someone's whispering in their ear, telling them to kill you and stuff. And you're like, "Oh,
I remember now.
Is that so? Okay."
Yeah, I remember this client now. Yep.
I'm gonna like check my exit, make sure there's nothing blocking me to my exit. Anyway, but yeah. But no, that sounds really bad. Psychotic people are actually more of a danger to themselves than others. The way I worded that made that sound really bad.
Well, that is even more reason to educate ourselves and have a dedicated.
Yeah, no. Statistically, people who are psychotic are, well, in mental health in general, you're always more at a risk of yourself than others. It's like the rare minority. But anyway.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on, and maybe we'll do this again sometime.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
It was fun.
All right.
Yeah.
Let me see if there's anyone for us to raid. And then if you guys want to stay on the call for a second after, real quick.
Yeah.
It'll be like really fast, yeah. Any recommendations, chat, who we should raid? If not, I'm just going to pick someone. All right, we're going to raid this. So what is it? Just exclamation point raid and then the name of the person?
I think it's slash. Oh, no, is it exclamation mark?